shortcut with things you do, because it's only idle minds that pass judgment on others.
Welcome to the second episode of the 100 Successful Women, a Conversation to Inspire series. I am so thankful for those of you who give me some positive and constructive feedback on my first episode. And I'm always grateful for all the guests who agreed to join me on this conversation. So in today's episode, we are having Samantha Bun from Samantha Bun Coaching to join us in this 100 Successful Women series. I met Sam virtually back in 2020, when Sydney was in lockdown. And that time, she created a mastermind and invited women entrepreneurs to join the weekly supporting group. From there, we have been connected and become accountability partners since then. I love her passion for helping more women to become more confident and teach them about self-love as well. Like I mentioned in my Facebook introduction yesterday, she is the real lioness and unleash and become unstoppable with her passion in coaching and also pole dancing. She coached a lot of women to become their most authentic self. So let's all listen to what Sam is sharing in our conversation coming up next. So, hey Sam, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you, Vivian. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad to hear that. First of all, Sam, I really wanted to say a big thank you to you for agreeing to join me on this challenge of me, the 100 Successful Women, a Conversation to Inspire interview series. So
yeah, such a great initiative.
I have been wanting to do this one, but then it has been dragging for a while. But then I'm so grateful that you are on this journey with me.
Yay! I'm so excited to see how this and the others turn out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward for that as well. So for those of my friends out there, I actually met Sam virtually back in 2021. I think when Sydney was in lockdown. And I think Sam was super kind to come up with these mastermind ideas to bring us together, because at time, I think everyone was locked down, staying at home. It was a bit of loss and lonely at time, especially for us who are in this so-called entrepreneurial journey. And in the mastermind, we got to connect with other ladies who are so supportive. And at the same time, because we are on this journey together. So I wanted once again to say thanks to you, Sam, for bringing us together.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been a pleasure to host the mastermind, and yeah, an incredible journey with all of the women who've participated.
So Sam, do you want to tell a little bit about yourself to those of our friends or the lioness, a woman out there who don't know you?
Sure. So I am a self-love and confidence coach. I help women to boldly learn how to love, claim, and express their true selves and live authentically. I think that's definitely something that I struggled with growing up in southwest Sydney. So Vivian and I both come from a small suburb called Bonnyrigg in Sydney, and it's pretty much a hub, and the surrounding areas here, predominantly immigrant population. So a lot of our families had fled from war-torn countries and resettled here and started new lives, which is such an amazing thing for our parents to have come here and do, not knowing any of the language, and being able to create a foundation and a home for us, which has been so special. And I'm really, really, truly appreciative and grateful. Part of that struggle is, I guess, learning how to adapt to Australian culture while being also raised with quite traditional values and upbringing. And so a lot of my experience growing up has been a conflict around expressing myself and carving out my own identity as a woman, and also struggling to find that balance between, making everyone at home happy. And so a lot of my traits growing up became a tendency to people pleasing trying to do things to be accepted and to be loved by my family and accepted by the broader community as well. And the truth is, I was this wild kind of spirit inside this tiny body that was just dying to come out. And yeah, so that's been my journey of coming home to myself and being able to express myself more freely without the fears and the constraints of the external environment.
So for those of you who don't know, I have a coaching business, which is Lioness Within Coaching. I think Sam is definitely that lioness being unleashed. And what do you think?
Yeah, that's a really great way. I love your coaching business name, Vivian, because yes, it is that, almost like learning how to strip away our conditioning and become this untamed version of ourselves, and reconstructing what it means to be a woman and ourselves.
Wow, that's so powerful. And I really agree with you. Your family who are changing their environment, come from another country to a totally new place. It's a big change for them. And I am guessing it is a big impact for the children as well. So since when you have this idea to become a self-love and confident coach?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey trying to define my niche, because at first I didn't recognize it as being self-love. But ultimately, that's my journey. They say that your niche is who you were 3 to 5 years ago, and what you struggled with. And so I was my first client. Well, I was a client of somebody else, actually. So I first actually had a coach. She was a relationship coach, and she called me at one of the most divine timing. So at that time, I was in my second year of doing my master's of creative writing. And yeah, I was going through a lot of anxiety around my work not being good enough. And I remember I had like a panic attack in my car just before I was going out to meet my supervisor. And also at the same time going through a relationship breakdown. And my dating record hasn't been the most immaculate. So I've had a lot of stints with relationships, and yeah, it became a massive insecurity for me. I always felt like it was me, I wasn't good enough. And I had all these beliefs around, people pleasing and wanting, I really, really struggled. And so as I was having this meltdown in my car, I got a phone call from my coach, Jess. So I didn't know or didn't realize I'd put down my phone number to download an e-resource. And yeah, so she had my contact and she was calling, and it just so happened that I was in that particular experiencing that difficult thing in my life. And so I took the leap and I said yes to getting coached. And I joined a 3-month program with her. And this would have been about over 5 years ago now. And so that was my first experience. It completely transformed my life. Coaching's still relatively new to people within our space in our community. And I think at the time I was the only person I knew who was doing it. And it was a big investment. It was $2,500. And I remember putting together a payment plan, and I wasn't earning all that much money at the time. So I took a big leap in myself. And just coming out of that experience, and it was difficult at first, because when you first open the door to doing the inner work, it can be very confronting, because you finally have to come to face all your inner demons. It gets worse before it gets better. That's what you have to be prepared for. And so as I was going through the process with her, learning the tools, I remember by the end of it, because she's a relationship coach. So I think I downloaded an e-resource on how to manifest your ideal partner or something like that. And by the end of it, I remember saying to her, I actually don't want to date, because in this process, I've learned so much about me, about Sam, this person that I denied her. I denied so many parts of myself, and I'm starting to learn all about her right now. And I'm just falling in love with her. I just had this new zest for life. And yeah, didn't want to be in a relationship. And so I spent a few months after that, either single or just casually dating, not with the expectation of anything long term. And I used all those tools to manifest so many different things in my life, like my dream career. Yeah, and then so it became a journey. I remember I finished up coaching and I thought, I'd love to be able to do this. I feel like every single woman in my life needs this. But I just didn't know how. And I didn't know if I was that person to be able to do that at the time. And it just so happened coincidentally that in the year that followed after the coaching, I inherited part of a pole dancing studio.
Wow, pole dancing.
Yes, that's another part of the journey. Yeah, so I'm also a pole dancing instructor. Yes, I inherited the pole dancing studio and got to work with some incredible women on that journey. And pole is such a, liberating, freeing, and supportive space for women and men too. We have some guys do pole dance as well. But it's just a place of accepting. So a lot of the girls often came to pole, dropped their troubles at the door, walked in, just became free with their body and able to explore what they could do with it and just have so much fun. And you forget all about the judgment. You forget all about that. And just getting to know some of the girls, I realized some of these girls are so beautiful, right? Beautiful on the inside and outside. But some of them were looking in the mirror and seeing and then mind you, they were like size 6, size 8 girls who were looking in the mirror and seeing really fat bodies. So this topic of body dysmorphia came up as well. And I think that was when, for me, I was like, wow, you can do all this work, you can lose all this weight, and you can still look, and you can look freaking amazing. But if you don't heal what's in here and in here, it won't make a difference. So you see that everybody's chasing to look good at the gym, right? Most people I find that are focused on looking after their body, they're missing the part about looking after their mind. Because your mind also needs to be exercised.
Wow, that's so amazing. I love that, Sam. And yeah, I think you are so right that everything about confidence is come from internal instead of external. But nowadays, people are actually selling confidence, telling you that you have to have a certain outfit or a certain car or certain body so that you can feel confident about yourself. And people are looking externally for that confidence. And I love that you actually helping this woman to find their confidence internally instead of externally. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned about pole dancing. I think it is something that people might be very interested to know about that. Do you want to share with us about pole dancing, or what actually inspired you to become a pole dancer?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So I did start out as a hip hop dancer since I was in high school.
Okay.
And I loved it, but I realized I had a more tendency to the provocative side. So we'd be doing hip hop and I just loved shaking my bum. Right? It was just me. That's just my inner self. Like I just love that sexy style, right? But like we talked about the clash in values, right? So there was always that side of me. I felt like I had to suppress it because growing up in a traditional household, but I remember when I was young, I used to walk up and I used to sing to my hairbrush, singing Britney Spears songs in my bedroom. And every time Victoria's Secret was on, I would pretend to be a Victoria's Secret model walking up and down the hallway. That was just me as a kid, right? And I loved that. I loved performing. I used to do the talent quest and, I love dancing. And so as I grew older, and I began to experiment more with dancing and see more styles of dancing, I realized like I had this tendency towards the more sexy style. And so pole dancing became a thing over 10 years, just over 10 years ago, still relatively new. It is born out of strip clubs. And so we give a lot of credit to strippers for starting that culture. So a lot of, and then what ended up happening was, one of the old school strippers opened a pole dancing studio and started teaching that to people. And then slowly, slowly, slowly it expanded. And so I went to a studio, I'd say close to 8 years ago now, in Parramatta called 𝚑𝚎𝚑𝚑. And that was where I first began my pole dancing journey. But I was very hush-hush about it then because it wasn't accepted. It was still seen as, and it still is seen as quite a provocative thing, but people are a lot more open to it now. But back then it was still very taboo. And, as Asian girls, we grew up, don't talk about sex, don't talk about your body, don't show your body. We weren't supposed to have a sexuality, right? Yeah. And so like to this day, my mom still thinks I'm a virgin, just to kind of give you some context there. Yeah, she still thinks I'm a virgin. It's pretty funny. Yeah, but that's kind of the culture and that we grew up in. And so, yeah, doing this thing that was a bit on the edge for me, it was actually quite exciting. And, to be able to move my body in a certain way and have fun with it. But I still didn't share much of it. It was just something I did with some of my girlfriends. And, we didn't post it on social media. Social media was still quite new. But if you did that, people will see it and they'll find out about it. But then I remember my first post that I ever put up about pole dancing was actually not a post of me dancing.
Someone
it was actually it was actually a post of my shoes. Because we wear those really high pleated shoes.
I don't know how you girls wear that shoes. It looks so tall, and I think I would break my leg wearing that.
Yeah. So I posted a picture of my shoes, and I think I put the quote by Rihanna, the S&M song in there. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but chains and whips excite me. And there were pictures of some chains and some whips next to my shoes. And I remember my cousin, he saw it and he called me up and he said, "What is this, Sam? What's going on here?" And it was a big thing. So my older cousin's very protective, and yeah, that was kind of my first experience of letting it out. But I just was so proud of it too. Like, oh my gosh, I love doing this thing so much. I love moving my body. I love the freedom it gives me to express more of myself. And I began to fall in love. Like, I think I lacked the confidence back then too with my body. But then doing pole and getting stronger, I was like so amazed and in awe of what my body could do. And that's when I learned how to love my body. I was just like, wow, these little arms could hold myself on a pole. How amazing is that? And just I feel so good about myself. And it's contagious. When you feel good about you, people look at you and they feel like they find something to feel good about themselves with. And that's what pole did for me. And I loved teaching it. I was asked to teach. And yeah, it just grew from there. And I love the empowerment, the sense of empowerment and the freedom, the lack of judgment within that community. When in every other area of my life, I was judged so much. But within pole, everybody's so open-minded. There's no judgment. And you go in and you might have insecurities about your body or whatever. But when you go into a pole studio and you're wearing just undies and a bra, and everyone looks at you and says, "Wow, you look incredible." There's that level of support in there.
Oh, thanks so much for sharing that story, Sam. I love that you actually overcoming your putting on that mask to hide behind that you're actually doing pole dancing, and then you are so courageous to put yourself out there and let others know what you're doing instead of being shameful of yourself. That's a big thing.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest ways to bury shame is to embrace it.
Love that.
Because shame is definitely something that I shared a live on this last night, but shame is definitely something that lives inside of you. You know, if when I did experience shame around pole dancing, it was what, you know, I thought that my parents would think of me or the community would think of me or whatever, right? But I remember one day I had this moment where I was like, hang on a second, do I think I'm, you know, I'm just think of some words that you might use to describe someone who pole dances, like, oh, she's a blah, right? I've been told that. You know, my dad said it to me. My mum said, look, he's not happy with it. And I just looked at my mum and I said, but mum, you know me. I'm your daughter. You raised me. Am I do you see me going out every night and sleeping at, you know, like I come home every single night and I'm still the same person, right? It's just that I do this thing where I show my body. But I know that I'm not. And therefore, those words are empty to me. So by doing that, I've stripped away the power of the judgment that someone else can inflict on me. And then the shame no longer lives inside my body. And that's why I own it so much now, Vivian, because I'm like, you know what? The more I do this, the more I embrace this part of myself. And that's just not in pole, that's in everything that I do. The more I own and the more I embrace all these parts of myself, then nobody can turn around and reflect it back on me. And because when someone criticizes you and you feel offended, the only time you'll feel offended if there's a part in there that triggers you personally. Yeah. But if the shame no longer lives inside your body, then it doesn't have the power to hurt you.
Yeah, the power is always in your own hand rather than on someone else. And I really love you are saying that the word is empty if you don't give the meaning to yourself. Wow, that's a very great advice for all the women out there, because a lot of time people like to label someone as someone, and then if whatever they are labeling, if you don't mean it for yourself, it doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
So what is your parents accepting you now?
The truth is, no, they turn a blind eye, you know, and I think this is very common in our culture where sometimes you just don't acknowledge it, don't talk about it, and it's not a thing, right?
True.
Yeah, so we really struggle to have those kind of conversations in our household. Anything that involves feelings, involves sexuality, involves the difficult topics, we just don't talk about it in my household. But I've learned to accept that now. I've released the expectation of my parents to be the parents I want them to be. Because I realized that the more I did that, the more I set them up to fail. Just much like the other way around, right? They wanted me to be a certain way. They wanted me to be traditional and conservative and, you know, and then I didn't turn out that way. So they've already set me up to fail. Right?
So
yeah. Even though I might, in everyone's eyes, be successful, but to them, it's like, oh, she's a failure. She's a disappointment because I didn't meet their standards of what they wanted in a child. And so I made this decision, and only recently, to release my parents of that expectation and just to love them for who they are.
Yeah, that's so good that you managed to do it, because let go of expectation of like when we were younger, that's how we were raised up, especially as a kid. We expect the love from others because that's how we get the love, because we have to be someone else, someone who are not we meant to be to please someone else, especially our so-called magical big people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So is there any challenges that you're facing right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's never a smooth road, right? Life always throws you something new when you thought you've overcome something else.
So how do you tackle any challenges or whatever challenges that come in your way nowadays?
That's a great question. Yes, I'm very, very grateful that through my experience as a coach, that I'm able to have now a tool belt or a toolkit, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
of resources, of tools that I use for myself when I'm going through a difficult situation. And I was just sharing with another coach friend of mine that, we're so lucky to be resourceful enough to be able to have things in our belt to move
Mm-hmm.
along through problems a lot easier
Mm-hmm.
than what we previously were able to do. So how do I overcome my challenges? Well, first of all, I think it's really important to have a support group, people who are like-minded on a similar path or journey to you, who you could kind of, or even a bit more ahead of you. That's why I still pay a coach, and then I've got the mastermind as well. So I've got tremendous support groups there for me for when I'm going through a difficult time, to be able to open up, be vulnerable, and just have them carry me and hold that space for me. And then also when I'm ready, to have the advice to move forward, and being able to coach myself sometimes too, just realizing, having that awareness of when you have a certain thought or a belief pattern that's recurring in your life. And realizing that you're not stuck, that life isn't always doom and gloom. I think I had a tendency, before I ever encountered coaching or personal development, I had a tendency to think, go down that spiral of, oh, my life is crap. Why is this happening to me? And really fall into the victimhood. Whereas now if I go through something really hard, I still have emotions. I still cry it out. And I still really honor those feelings. But then I have the ability to step away from it and say, okay, what can I do here? What needs to be done here? How can I shift this mindset? How can I flip it around so that I'm not stuck in this dark hole that leads to nowhere?
Yeah, I love what you're saying, that being a coach is actually and you have the mentality of being resourceful instead of being stuck there and blaming the situation, blaming others. So you are resourcefulness to find out where can you find a resource that can help you to get out of your situation or the challenges. That's very important, because people tend to live in the victim mentality, and they thought that, oh, there's no way for me to get out of this. So it's very important. That's a great one for especially I think all the women out there to hear what Sam was saying. Okay, so let me see. So is there anyone that inspired you for becoming who you are today?
Oh, throwing the hard questions at me. Honestly, I can't think of like any, if you're thinking of celebrities, role models, not so much. But in terms of people around me, I've had a lot of really strong female role models in my life who've constantly been that inspiration for me. And now I find it's the women in my circle who are inspiring to me, that push me, to that boundary, like having the women in the mastermind and seeing you ladies thrive in each area of your life, whether it's not just in business, but as a mother, as a friend, as a, community leader in different areas. It's really, that's really uplifting. But in terms of setting me off on my journey, I'd say a series of women. But the strongest role models for me, I'd say, are both my grandmothers. Very resilient, tough women who just hold the family unit together. And they're so understanding. They're very spiritual. So not so much in terms of the entrepreneurial side, but one of my grandmothers, she's always encouraged me to be better. She's always supported my decision to further education. She's never passed judgment on me for being single in my 30s. She's always been on that path of, do you first. And that's such a, like I said, like when I didn't really so much get that from my parents. with my parents, I think there was more of a, follow this particular life path.
Mhm.
But with my grandmothers, very different. I think the love between grandmothers and grandchildren is very different to the love between a parent and a child.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I think my grandmothers are my biggest role models to this day, because I think if they had the opportunity, and unfortunately they didn't because they escaped the Khmer Rouge, to carve out a life where they were able to get educated and, pursue a career, I think they would absolutely have done that. But they didn't have that opportunity, and so they were very encouraging towards my aspirations. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
so
just to be
good.
a good person.
Yeah, that's so beautiful because of your grandmothers who inspired you, and that it's always so good to have someone to support you to do whatever you want to do or whatever you feel like doing. Isn't that right?
It is. And it probably wasn't always that way, but I think as they get older,
Mm-mm.
then they realize more and then they come around a bit more. So,
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Your grandparents, that's grandmothers, right?
yeah.
That's so good to hear that. So I think is there anything that you would like to share, or anything, if there's one question that you wish that I would have asked you, what would
Oh.
that be?
One question.
Is this a tough one?
This is a hard one. This is harder than the other ones. Okay. I guess it's what tips or advice could you give to help people overcome their challenges or fears, right?
This is actually one of my questions at the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so yeah, what is your tips going to give to others out there? Because from the stories that you share, I really appreciate Sam for sharing your story from your family background to how you go through all the challenges, which is your breakups with your partners at time, and you were probably at the like trap yourself, and then found a coach that get you out from that challenges, and also become someone who is so confident. It's not worrying about what people seeing you as a pole dancer, and you have the confidence. So what, like you say, what are the tips that you can give to other women out there who want to be confident? I think confidence is very important for everyone, not only you and me, but all the women out there.
Yeah, so what's been really helpful for me is, one, getting very clear about your values. It's important to have like an inner compass, right? Something that guides you. When we're most confused and feeling stuck or trapped, or any of those words that we can use to describe feeling uneasy, it's often because we're so cluttered in our mind, because we're trying so hard to kind of pull at every angle and, trying to juggle. We're in survival mode most of the time. Like I need to work, I need to make money, I need to go get this done for mum, and I need to do this, and I need to go pick up the kids, or whatever it is, right? So you're constantly in this battle. And that's all a distraction from the real root of who you are. So I would really suggest that you spend, at least give yourself a day. I did this some point last year where I booked myself a hotel room. And I went to stay, and I literally just did a whole day of journaling and giving myself some tender love and care, and just spent time with myself, getting to know myself, like what are my values, what's important to me. And then you start to create an alignment with what you're doing and how I have a tendency to be an overgiver, right? And that's because And this is one of the things I love most about myself is I'm such a giving, generous, loving person. But also it can be to my own detriment because often people who are overgiving, it's because they want to make sure that other people feel as good as they want to feel.
I can totally agree with you because you are so generous and you are just like, you're just willing to help anyone out there.
Yeah, but sometimes I have to pull back too because in overgiving, I take away from myself,
That's right.
you know. So that's definitely something that I'm always working on is having to go back and ask myself, is this loving to me? Today, if I am overgiving in my family and overgiving in my relationship, and then I'm giving everybody else all of me, but then in the end, I'm getting nothing. And then I've been struggling a lot with receivership because then you go, oh, but what about me? I've done all this stuff for other people, but nobody's giving that love and attention to me. And I realize I do that because I give people the love and affection that I would want for myself because I didn't get it. Yeah, so it's really important to turn that attention back to yourself quite often because sometimes you don't realize you're at that point until you're depleted, when your cup's entirely empty, and then you realize, oh no, why am I feeling this way? But then now making it an effort to always check in with myself, like what has the choices I've made been loving to me today?
That's a very important message for all the women out there, especially moms, because they're always, those of the moms I know, most of the moms I know, they put themselves last. And I really love the idea of you checking in with yourself and then to have a very clear values of what is that you want, rather than just give, like what's the expectation of others. So yeah, that's a very great tips, Sam. Aside from this, is there anything else that you have to share to like how to become more confident?
How to be more confident, I guess. Yeah, it goes back to that releasing that shame and that judgment again. And just realizing that everybody is always too worried about themselves to be thinking about you. And here you are worried about what other people think of you, right? But if you really think about it, you're probably sitting at home worried so much about yourself. You had no time to think about someone else, right? So I guess it's just about that. Yeah, just forgetting about what other people think and fill your cup with things you love, fill your cup with things you do, because it's only idle minds that pass judgment on others. But if your mind is filled with, I'm sure you know this journey, Vivian, personal development, reading, enriching, soulful connections, growing yourself, your mind's already so occupied with so much else to be thinking about what someone else's life looks like. But instead, because you're so busy filling up your cup and doing things that enrich your soul, you only have kind and generous things to say about others. Because you can see the reflection of them in you.
Yes, that's so true. I love that. So important for us to be on the personal development, because I think it's so important that everyone should be feeding your mind with the right mindset. And I really resonate with you because one of the mentor of mine, he mentioned about something like spotlight effect, where you feel like there is a spotlight on you. You thought that everyone was looking at you, whether you dress nicely, whether you have the hair, whether you have that outfit. But in actual fact, everyone have their own worries. Everyone is care more about themselves rather than on you. Don't think that you are that celebrity out there. People are going to focus on you. I love that, Sam.
Exactly. You're special, but you're not that special.
Yes, that's true. And you just have to love yourself and focus on yourself rather than worry so much about what others think of you. Thank you so much, Sam. I think the tips and your sharings today are so valuable for all the women out there. So I think that's it for our session today. But before we go, before we finish this session, is there any last piece of advice or message that you would like to give to other women out there?
Yeah, I guess my last tip would be just to surround yourself with people who give you add more value to your life. Yeah, and just
Mm,
bring joy. That's all
mm,
I can say is if anybody's causing you any grief, or if they're the ones passing you the judgment, then they're not the right people for your space and in your corner. So the right people will come to you once you vibrate at a higher frequency and just embrace yourself even more.
yeah, thank you so much for that advice. I think that's so useful to me as well. And then I love that I am in this space with you and other mastermind ladies, and also on my personal development. I definitely on the higher vibration, like you say, to attract more people with the like-minded people in my life. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, and good stuff with the work you're doing, Vivian. I feel like your life is going to be so much more enriched by meeting 100 women who are doing incredible things. And I can't wait to see how that journey evolves.
Yeah, I strongly believe that as well, because I think with this connection with you guys are 100 successful women in different areas that you're doing and successful in overcome your hurdles. I think it is so much values and so much knowledge that I can learn from you ladies as well.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank
Hopefully I can
you.
see you and pick your minds again next time.
I'd love that.
Thank
Okay,
you. Bye.
bye.